Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here in spite of the terrible weather today. I'm Sandrine Buteau, the director of Albertine Bookstore, and I am, as well as my whole team, very, very happy to celebrate tonight Dominique Nabokov, a very good friend and a dedicated customer of Albertine Bookstore. Dominique Nabokov will present her latest book of photography, Tante Simone, with Gini Alhadeff, who gives a glimpse into Dominique's extraordinary life story in a short and insightful foreword. Dominique Nabokov was raised by her aunt Simone from the age of 4 in a detached house surrounded by a garden in the French town of Compiègne. Those formative years will be a blend of everyday life and a vivid daydreams propelled by her fascination with New York, Hollywood, and its stars. After her aunt's death in 1999, Dominique decided to photograph the house as it was, to keep a record of the place where it all began and a memory of the time behind it. Dominique Nabokov was a regular contributor to the New York Review of Books, and her portraits were featured in their 2009 desk diary and their 50th anniversary catalogue, Dominique Nabokov, The World of the New York Review of Books, in 2013. Her 3 previous books, New York Living Rooms, Paris Living Rooms, and Berlin Living Rooms, were recently republished by Appartamento and have resulted into solo exhibitions at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs and Galerie Patricia Dorfman in Paris, and Stanley Wise Gallery in New York. Dominique divides her time between the United States and France, and she is currently working on a book of portraits to be published by Appartamento. Gini Alhadeff is the author of a memoir, The Sun at Midday, Tales of a Mediterranean Family, and of Diary of a Djinn, a novel, both published by Pantheon. She has contributed to the New York Review of Books, translates from Italian to English, most recently Natalia Ginzburg's first novel, The Road to the City, for the storybook and this series by New Direction, which she curates. And Fleur Jaegui's I Am the Brother of XX, published by New Directions in 2018. It was awarded by 2009 John Florio Translation Prize by the British Society of Authors. She edited the anthology of poems by Patricia Cavalli, My Poem Won't Change the World, published by FSG in 2013. And now I'm leaving the floor to Dominique and Gini. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Sandrine. By far, one of the most amusing things I've ever done is write the introduction to this book of Dominique, which came out of a conversation spoken very quickly, as with everything.
Je comprends pas ce que tu dis.
Ah ben oui, voilà. So I speak in a low voice, and well, we'll just.
Donne-moi la question.
Donne-moi la question. So where shall we begin with the house?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So it's a red brick house.
Oh, I mean, yes, it's a red brick house. That's not the...
And you have to speak into the...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to explain to you how the project came out. My aunt, who brought me up in Compiègne, died in 2000. And we had to sell her house where she had lived with her husband for 60 years. And I was brought up by her and my uncle. And she had kept everything. She's somebody who never throw out anything. She had kept everything of myself, of my book, of the place where I used to make painting and drawings. I mean, and her house have been the center of the life of not only me, but of all my family. So with my mother, we had to empty the house in 2 months because the house had to be sold. And suddenly I had the impulse to record, but I had no idea I would do an exhibition or a book or anything. I just wanted to record everything in that place because it had been a very important central place in my life, which I hated at first and which, in retrospect, I really loved. So I photographed that very quickly. A lot of pictures are not particularly well taken. They are a little bit not always out of focus, but they, this is not an art book, this is not a decoration book, it's just a recording of a life through the house. And then I didn't know what to do.
But it took 20 years.
And yeah, because I didn't know what to do, because
my
aunt was very bourgeoise and she wouldn't have liked to have her house exposed to the world. So I thought, it will remain in my archive. And then I saw a movie of Desplechin, which was called Un Conte de Noël, which took place in a city like Compiègne, Roubaix, and in a house with red bricks, like the one of my aunt. And it was a Christmas. I mean, the actors were Catherine Deneuve, Jean-Paul Roussillon, Almaric. And it was a family who met for Christmas, and it somehow was a sort of reflet of the same Christmas we used to have in that house, when everybody came, and some people slept in the sofa, others slept in the attic, and everybody fought like in the movie. So then it gave me an idea to look again at the picture and to do maybe
to make a book of it.
Book. And it took 20 years to do it.
I would like to read a quote from the book, which is, "My Aunt Simone's home was not far from Paris, no more than 50 kilometers, but the attic, my refuge, was situated somewhere in Hollywood, California." So you have to explain that.
Well, because my generation, we saw a lot of American movies, I mean, the French cinema after the war was not functioning as much. And so all the American movies came, the good, the bad one, the série B, whatever. And my aunt loved the cinema, so I went a lot to the movies. And in a way, the movies, and especially the American movies, helped me, because I was not so happy to be there and not to be with my mother and my father and my sister in Paris. So the movie...
And also you didn't like school all that much.
When I hated school, because,
yes.
I didn't like to go to school, but I had to go to school. My aunt was a teacher.
So often you went to the movies in the afternoon.
And I went to the movies, I bought the Hollywood movies, and it was a help to survive in a way. It was another world which made me dream, and I wanted to, I wanted to go to Hollywood, I wanted to go to America. My sister too, actually, because she became a movie director in Paris, but we had that in her blood, I guess.
So we look at, see what comes up here?
Huh?
See, very fast.
So, we are showing... That was...
Wait, let's start from the beginning.
I mean, you can show that quickly.
Okay, so that's the...
So
this is the house.
This is the house. Voilà. Typical of a house of the north of France. You can... Maybe,
tu dois parler dedans.
Can you...
Dominique parle toujours.
Alors, tu veux la pousser?
Non, vas-y.
Bon.
Je passe. That's the kitchen. Yes.
What kitchen? So, this is the stairs. My sister and I, we saw a lot of movies, and we played in that. This is my aunt and my uncle.
Okay, now this is very important, because this is the Tante Simone that the entire book was inspired by. And Dominique also called her, which unfortunately we don't have in the book, she called her the Tante Gâteau, which I suppose means the cake aunt.
Yes, she was.
It means the generous aunt.
She was very generous, and she took care of all of us, Because my parents were very bohemian, and Tante Simone was very bourgeois.
And the portrait was done by somebody who very good photographer.
It's a portrait of the Studio Harcourt. The Studio Harcourt was the studio of photography of the movie stars before the war, during the war, after the war. All the great stars were photographed by the Studio Harcourt. Yeah. My uncle is not Studio Harcourt. No. Alors, there was a room in the house,
the attic,
where I used to be all the time, painting, cutting magazine stars, painting Frank Sinatra, for example. That was a famous photo I discovered when I came to New York that was taken by John Milley, which was a photographer of life. He was a friend of my husband, and he took that picture on the set of Pal Joe when Frank Sinatra, at the end of the day, put the jacket on his shoulder and left. So I painted it. I mean, if I can see well, but not very good. You have the magazine. I cut Yul Brynner, Jean Cocteau, Armstrong, Yves Montand, picture of Lucien Kerg, paintings of New York, which I painted because I'd never been there, but my dream was to come to New York.
But this is much before you met your husband.
Oh, I was...
Yes, so no, we must explain,
no, but
because not everybody knows. Exactly. So you...
No, I mean, in Compiègne, there was not my husband, no.
But it's very strange that you have the picture of Frank Sinatra
on
your wall, and then you met the photographer who took the picture.
The first time I came to New York with Nicholas, he took me for lunch at John Milley, who had a studio at in the Flatiron Building. And they were talking. Of course, I was very excited because I knew that he had photographed many people. I was looking into the box, and I fell on that photograph. That's it.
So you realized very early on that you could do portraits.
That I could do portraits? I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a photographer. I knew I wanted that because I liked everything which was linked to the press. I liked the magazine, I liked the newspaper, I bought all the French magazines related to the cinema, Ciné Monde, Ciné Revue, and the American one, Photoplay, Screenland, Motion Picture. I used to get them in Paris, you know, au métro d'Anvers, because there used to be those places where you could buy all the magazines. I knew I wanted to do that. And
But then you photographed 3 writers, and that was the beginning of a very long series when you photographed Norman Mailer, Philip
but
Roth,
that's something else.
and Kurt Vonnegut.
When my husband died, I was in New York, and I had to work, and I thought, well, this is the time where maybe I should do what I want to do. So I decided I wanted to be a photographer, which was a bit crazy because I had taken a few photographs, but I didn't have any technique.
Well, actually, you'd taken photographs of sheep when you were 14, no? In the Auvergne?
Yes, I have some picture I took, yes, when I was 12 or 13, the sheep in the Auvergne, picture of that kind of, yes, with the old Kodak box, you know.
Yes.
But there it was serious, and I became the assistant of Patrick de Marchelier through Alex Lieberman, who arranged it for me, I must say. I was the 4th assistant. I was bringing the coffee, washing the floor, opening the studio, but he was very nice. He let us use the camera and the studio. And I had a fantastic carnet d'adresse, so I went and photographed the people I was meeting.
But you also realized that while working in fashion, many pictures were taken. There's always many rolls to take
30,
one shot.
Sometimes 32 rolls for a cover of Vogue.
But you sort of realized that that wasn't your way of doing it.
Unfortunately, because that's where you make money. But I choose to be freelance and to do what I wanted. Yes, I didn't want to do a portrait. The girl was sitting between 2 umbrellas and with the hand on the table, and we shot 33 rolls for the same face. Yeah.
But you had been, you already knew Cartier-Bresson.
I knew Cartier-Bresson because he was a friend of Nicholas. They had shared an apartment in New York in the late 30s. But Cartier-Bresson was not a help because after I decided to be a photographer, I went to lunch to the apartment of Martine and Henri, and I was a bit nervous because Nicholas was dead. I decided to be a photographer. I thought I'm crazy. He opened the door and he said to me, je le dis en français, il paraît que tu travailles pour un escroc. I heard that you're working for a crook. That was a fashion photographer, was for him. So that cut. After that, I didn't see him that much.
But he was important remotely. He had an influence because you said.
After that,
I knew I could get my pictures in the first 2 or 3 shots.
Yeah.
I knew right away that I was good at portraits.
I'm a great admirer of Cartier-Bresson. Right. For me, he is one of the best photographers, if not number one in the world. That for me. But and he's a genius somehow. But I didn't stay around because he was extremely destructive and negative on that sense, you know. Because he always say photography, it's nothing, it's not important, you know.
But the photos that you took of the house were also done very quickly.
Very quickly, without thinking. You know, I had an Olympus OM2, and I was just taking picture mechanically. That's it, recording. That's what it was, basically. I wish we'd taken more time, but there was no way we could because we were emptying the house, selling the furniture, sharing it with other people of the family. So, but they're not too bad. You'll see.
And the photographs of the house came before the series of living rooms?
Oh, very much.
Yes. So in a sense, it was the beginning of
I was not doing at all living room. Living room is something which happened by accident.
Then maybe you can tell
Tina
the story
Brown,
of how that happened.
At the time, editor of the New Yorker, wanted me to do an essay in photography. And then she proposed that I photograph the study of the writers. And I said to her, I've been photographing writers for the last 20 years. Franchement, I don't want to go and photograph their study. She said, so what would you like to photograph? I said, maybe their bedroom. She said, they will never let you come into the bedroom. So we decided the living room. And she gave me an assistant. And that assistant, Pascal, had a film, a Polaroid film, which you took with a big chamber, and we decided to photograph some of the living rooms that the New Yorker had chosen. The first living room were chosen by the New Yorker because 18 people, and the picture came either green or blue, according to the light around. We show it to Tina, and she said, I like it, go on. And that's how I started to photograph living room.
And then you did.
And it changed my life as a photographer, actually. Because lately, I've been only photographing living room and interior. I want to change. But they brought me more success than anything else. So, well, they are kind of portraits, you know. They are not photos of decor. They are kind of portraits. I photograph the room the way it is. I don't change anything. I don't bring any special light. I use the lights which are there. And in a way, it's a portrait of the person. So it's still linked to my style.
It's done very quickly.
And it's
like
done
always
very
talk
quick,
about the first or second
Everything
attempt.
I do is quick. Yeah. That's true. And it's always the first take which are good.
Without naming names, could you talk about the last portrait that you did, and the man was apparently a little bit annoyed that you were there?
Of who?
The photograph that you took recently, the portrait you took recently.
Of who?
When you did it.
Laquelle? Mais dis-le tout fort. J'entends pas.
Le type qui était ici.
Hein?
Le type qui était ici.
Je ne sais pas ce que tu racontes. Écoute.
Je vais t'écrire.
L'écrivain, tu veux dire de Kremlin?
Oui.
Ah oui. Quel est le nom du livre?
Mais non, mais ne le dis pas, parce que tu peux raconter l'histoire. Just tell how it's interesting because often they don't want to be photographed.
Well, they never want to be photographed. People never, you know, people don't like to be photographed. They're always very, very difficult. Well, lately there was a writer who has been very famous lately on a book that is a sort of a portrait of Putin as a novel, which is called what's the name of? Voilà. And he gave me an appointment at the Knickerbocker Club. And it was a very cold day. I arrived, and he said he didn't want to go outside because it was too cold. Well, so I put him against the wall, and I did one roll, and the pictures are great.
And that's what happened. Well, there was no wall in the.
I photograph you.
In the case of Italo Calvino, there was no wall, but he also was very annoyed, wasn't he?
Italo Calvino, that Leo Lerman had engaged me for Vogue to photograph Italo Calvino. So I have an appointment with him to an apartment around Washington Square. And he was very bad mood. He wouldn't say a word. So I said,
he never said a word.
He never said a word, okay. So I said, let's go outside. It was a very cold day. We went into Washington Square. He sat on a bench, and I did a few shots, and it's one of the best portraits I've ever done of anybody. But
it was fantastic picture.
I didn't get a word from him. He was like an oyster. Et voilà.
Et voilà. Right. So, so your Aunt Simone threw away all your movie magazines.
Yes, I had a great collection of all those magazines, photo plays, screenplay. I keep looking at them for days. I had about 1,000 of them. Well, when I left and married Nicholas and came to New York with her maid, they threw them all. Oh, it's like...
Because she used to find you in the morning asleep.
Well, I didn't look at my school books. They were all under my bed, and I was watching all those stories and trying to understand their life, So it was insane.
How old were you when you went to the Frank Sinatra concert?
Oh, Frank Sinatra concert? Well, no, then I was in Paris. At that time, I was at the Lycée Jules Ferry in Paris for le baccalauréat de philo. And I saw that Frank Sinatra was going to sing at Olympia for one night. He had never sung in Paris ever. I said, I have to go there. So, of course, there was no way to get a ticket because the Tout Paris was there, all the movie stars, everybody was there. It was quite a fortune. I still went to the Olympia. And I stayed at the door. I saw everybody arriving. And I think, le gardien took pity of me. He let me come in. So I stayed there, and and Sinatra was one of the singers I admired the most in those days, and I still do admire him a lot. And
you said especially when his voice got a little more
well. When I said that he lost a bit of his voice, and I think he was better actually. But he has a great phrase. He had no musical education, but he has a rhythm and a phrase which was exceptional. He is one of the greatest crooners there is. Even Bing Crosby does not come to it. None of them come to it because he has some element of jazz, and I think he's irresistible on the stage.
Where did you hear him on the radio?
Well, no, I heard it. Every week, my aunt and I went to Paris. That was a tradition. We went to Paris, so we would go to my mother's apartment. And she would like to do la rue Saint-Honoré, le boulevard, comment ça s'appelle, la rue de Rivoli. On allait prendre un chocolat at Angelina. And with my sister, we loved the Champs-Élysées because we thought maybe we'll see some movie stars. But so, au passage du Lido, you had a place where you got all the great records. And there were all the 33 millimeter record of Frank Sinatra, Eddie Fisher, Perry Como, all those singers. So I bought them. I still have them, actually.
Okay, now we have to talk
Ella Fitzgerald, Dean Martin, all these people. I was the only one who know them. At school, when I talked to my friend about these people, they had no idea who they were. I was already in America, voilà.
Now we have to talk about the period of the corridas.
The?
Corridas.
La corrida. Yeah, well, in school, the first day at lycée, I was sitting next to a very, very pretty girl, très, très jolie. And we discovered we were born the same day, the same month, the same year. Her name was Christine von Ranke. She came from a German aristocratic family who had been great resistant during the war, and she had been hidden at the peasant's house in the Alps. And after the war, they were very poor journalists, and they didn't want to go back to Germany. They stayed in Paris, but they had a very small apartment, so they put Christine au lycée en pension. And she became my closest friend. We are still friends now. And with her, I discovered with her father, he knew all the writers of Paris, tous les intellectuels, and he was a real fan of the corrida. So he took us 3 times for Easter to the feria of Nîmes. We would live in his deux chevaux, and we would go all the way down to Arles, and we'll stay at the Nord-Pinus Hotel. In those years, that was the real hotel where all the toreros used to stay, but we didn't stay in the main, we stayed in the Commun. And these were the years of Dominguin, Ordóñez, Riron, Hostos. So we were absolutely in love with them. And I discovered the world of the corrida, which I must say I enjoyed enormously. But now you can't say that because you're going to be arrested.
Yeah, well, we have another thing that we can't really say, which is the hunting that went on in Compiègne.
Yes, in Compiègne also.
So we're not really saying it, however.
Well, in Compiègne there was Le Baron James de Rothschild who was hunting the deers. So he had a big equipage with hundreds of dogs and piqueux and, with all the decorum and the rite of the chasse. And we used to follow that on Tuesday. And on Friday, we used to go to the chasse à cour, and we enjoyed it too. But now you can't.
Though you didn't go on a horse. You didn't go on horseback.
I tried to. My aunt had a horse, and she was riding. I tried to go on a horse, and the first time I fell, and I never went up again. That was not my place. Well, let's go back to the book, because the most important thing...
So let's see what we find here, a few more pictures.
It's a sort of memoir.
This is your bedroom. Wait, that's your bedroom, right?
Yes, with the painting I did. That was
You have to speak into the thing.
What?
No,
you have to pick it up. Okay. Marina Vladi, and that's a little church in Corrèze where my grandmother had a house. But you can't see the... If you buy the book, you will see the bedroom better. These are all the people I wanted to know, and that Jeanne Moreau with Ingmar Bergman, François Sagan, Sid Charis, May Bright. I mean, these were all the people I cut in Jour de France, who was very good. There was a very good photographer, Luc Fournol, which unfortunately they don't do exhibition of his work, and he is a very good photographer of the time. And there, La Corrida, Hostos, Ordóñez, Dominguin, and then Tony Curtis, because I was a fan of Tony Curtis. Well, that's when the house is empty. Voilà. So, on peut faire une
I would like to... I listened to the interviews some interviews that Dominique did for the New York Review of Books with Eve Bowen and Lucy McKeon.
She wanted to come, but she couldn't tonight.
They're wonderful interviews on Robert Frank and Gary Winogrand. And I liked what you said about Gary Winogrand, that looking at his pictures, you thought it sort of gave you permission to be a photographer.
Yeah, but Robert Frank too. But there are 3. There are other ones.
Yeah.
Forgotten. What is the name of the black African American, very famous, who did fashion in the 50s and the 60s? Huh? Yes, I did a portrait of him too, because I was a great admirer of him, especially his social work that people don't really know. Yeah. Well,
the one thing that is absent from your photographs and very present in your life is food.
Food?
Food.
We didn't photograph food, no.
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 I always like the descriptions of the sort of things you ate with your mother.
Oui, but difficult to photograph food. I did a little bit at one point with a girl who was the daughter-in-law of Rubinstein. It was at the beginning of my career. She came to France and with a card from the Diners Club, and we went to a few restaurants in the south. And I tried to do, but they were not good. No.
Did you ever take pictures of your mother?
I hate to photograph anything with lights that I bring. I hate to use the strobe. I hate to use the flash. I just like to photograph directly the way it is. Food need to be enhanced, to be organized. This is not my thing.
Well, recently I was struck because Dominique stayed with me for a few days, and I realized that every day she takes the bus.
Yes.
And goes all the way from uptown to all the way downtown. But this is not something that happens once in a while. No. It happens absolutely every day.
I have to be out.
So there's no way that one could have heavy equipment.
I wanted to write my memoir, but I never did, because you have to stay put, and I can't stay put. No way.
Because you could write on the bus.
No, because I like on the bus, and when you were staying with you, I would go to Saint-Ambrose for my coffee, then I would take the bus down, then I would stop to Italy to buy other things, then I would go home, and then I would take the bus to go up again. It's exhausting, actually. But
yes, I think so. Yes.
I mean, if I can't do it... My mother was like that. She died at 102, and she was, a week before she died, I was with her at a café, Le Soleil, at the corner of Rue Oberkampf et Avenue de la République, and she had her espresso. And she loved to go to the cafe, and she loved to walk. She said, if I can't walk, I die.
But that's Auvergne, you know?
That's Auvergne. We are peasants from Auvergne. Voilà.
Okay. I think now we open it to the floor in case anybody has any questions.
Faut parler fort. You have to talk loud.
When you look back now, merci. When you look back at your book,
yes,
what does it do? Do you have emotions?
Yes.
Does it bring you back to your childhood?
Yes. I see my aunt. Actually, my mother and my aunt brought me up, but my mother was not far. I like them both. I mean, I miss my mother, but I never resented the fact that she left me with her sister. So when I see the house of my aunt, it brings also the world of my mother. They were the two sisters of a family of 6 children, but they had a huge difference of age with the others. So they sort of lived together. And my aunt, we married a wealthy man, sort of took care of my mother and her children and of all of us. So when I see that book, it brings me all the memory, good memories actually. I guess when we get old, maybe we transform everything. When I was young in Compiègne, sure, I missed Paris. Compiègne was a sinister town. At 6 o'clock, there was nobody. You know, it's a historical city, but not a cat in the street. You know, it was depressing beyond belief. So I dreamed of Paris. My parents lived Place d'Ancourt, Théâtre de l'Atelier, Montmartre. You know, I dreamed of that world. But with time, well, it's fine. You know.
But you never photographed your mother's house.
The what?
You never photographed your mother's house.
Well, she had no house. My parents lived in a small apartment in Montmartre, and they never moved. That's why I was put at my
with your aunt?
And my sister
well, they
Florence.
were very bohemian.
And my
parents,
sister Florence stayed with my grandmother on my father's side. Only my younger sister Nathalie stayed there. So there was a small apartment. No.
And your mother lived until she was 100 and...
No, then when my father died young, and my mother, then my aunt and her husband, they own a building in Paris, Rue Oberkampf, a big 6th-floor apartment, a big building. So they gave me an apartment, and they gave one to my mother. And my mother lived above me until she died.
Which was at the age of?
102.
102,
Yep.
right? Yes. Drinking coffee.
Drinking coffee.
Yes.
Going to the movies.
And eating good
Going
things.
to the movies all the time.
Having been through that similar experience of cleaning out a house that somebody lived in for 50 years, I was just curious to know what was the biggest and most amazing surprise you found in the house as you were clearing it out?
So what was the...
What was the
biggest
biggest
and most
surprise?
amazing
The
surprise,
most
something that you
amazing
found that
surprise
you
as
just
you
was
were
absolutely blown
cleaning
away
out
by?
the house. Anything that completely
No,
took you by
nothing,
surprise?
because my sister and I were terrible. We had opened already every drawers before. We had used in the bedroom of Aymont. We dressed with our... I mean, we were impossible. So there was no secret there.
But you used to dress up as Queen Elizabeth and Prince
yeah,
Philip.
Queen
no?
Elizabeth and Prince Philip. We dreamt of royalty. You were aiming high, you know. No, there was no surprise. I didn't find any gold. I didn't find nothing. No, it was strange, actually. But you felt a little bit, you know, when somebody dies and leave the house, it's indiscreet a little bit. You start to go and you don't have a nice feeling.
Do you have a relationship with the home or apartment that you currently live in New York? How long have you lived in New York City? And do you have a particular relationship, like one sees in your photos with your tante's house, with your own home?
How long have you lived in New York City, and do you have a relationship with the place you live in?
Well, I live in New York. I've been living in New York City for 45 years. And I lived in the same street, 20th Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue in Chelsea. At first, with my husband Nicholas, we live in a brownstone next at 450 West 20. Then after he died, I stayed in that apartment, the brownstone, and then the owner took it back. So I moved 3 houses next door, 456. I'm still there. I don't like to move.
But do you think it's a place that you would photograph? I mean, do you have that kind of...
Yes, I should, and I have not done it, curiously enough. So I guess I'm eternal, but I should do it maybe. No, I should. I should photograph my apartment, but strangely enough, I have not.
How many writers have you portrayed? How many writers do you think you've portrayed?
1,000.
Really?
Michael Shea knows. So many were published in the New York Review.
Lost count.
Yeah. Too much. And I want to do a portrait. I'm working on it, and I still have in my mind what Bob Silvers told me. He said, yes, do a book of portraits, but not too many. And he's right, because you can't put all the vegetable in the soup. You have to choose. So it's going to be difficult.
Yes.
Oh, le micro. I hate to be photographed. Come on. Bon, ben ça va.
Ça va.
I think we're okay.
But you also have a few books in mind, I think.
Yes, I have a few books in mind.
I think you could talk about that for a minute.
Portrait. Apartamento is going to do it. I want to do a book on the New York Review of Books world and the people around. I mean, the intellectual scenes of New York, not, of course, pop and rock and anything, but let's say the literate world of New York and the social work of New York. I have a big archive, and I would like to do justice to that, because the two people I admire the most were Barbara Epstein and Robert Silvers, no question about it. And then I'd like to do a book on Israel, because I have a huge archive on Israel, because my husband was a friend of the mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek, so we used to go to Israel every year, and we stayed 2 months in Jerusalem, and I went everywhere. And I went back after he died, so I like to do that, and a book of Berlin, because again, I went a lot in Berlin, because Nicholas was director of the Berliner Festival, and after he died, I went back to Berlin, which is a city I like, you know, So that's what I would like to do, actually.
You were a fellow, no, in Berlin?
Well, at the American Academy in Berlin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great city.
Okay.
Voilà.
Voilà. Thank you.
Oh, mais écoute.
No more questions?
Bon. It's all
Thank you, Gini. Thank you, Dominique.